So that's the Dr. Bawa. And definitely we don't need an introduction for him now. So I would like to invite Dr. Bawa for this conversation. It is really privilege. It's my real privilege to invite Dr. Bawa here, who is a founder and president emeritus of our institute, who has a quite long and influential career spanning research, institutional building, policy engagement, and whose vision has also been very critical for evolving ATREE in past 30 years. Thank you, Dr. Bawa, for being here. So, before we begin and talk about your latter work, I would like to go back and talk about your early life. Often we say that when we think about the people's science or society or public responsibilities, these things are quite shaped quite early when we realize. And these are shaped by the different conversation, different things we encountered in early ages. So when you're in your childhood, when you are growing in a very small town in Kapurthala in Punjab, so what were the incidences or experiences that shaped the way you later pursue science or that change the way you engage with the science or doing science? Can you elaborate on that?
Really, not a great deal. I always tell people that the first 23 years of my life were pretty unremarkable. And why I say 23 years, as many of you know, and I've told many people the same story. That is when I first encountered biodiversity. Of course, biodiversity is all around us, but really the feeling, an incredible feeling of being surrounded by all forms of life in one of the greatest hotspots of biodiversity in the Eastern Himalaya. So when I look at that experience, I can't recall anything during my first 23 years that it comes even close. And in a way, I think that's the day when my learning started. That's the day when I really knew in very, very definite terms as to what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
But as I reading about you, you mentioned that your earlier days were quite shaped by the Nehru speeches. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that was very remarkable. I think I was 8 years old when India was partitioned, and of course during partition and before partition, the towering figures of Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. And in a way, I think when you think about the history of India, I think it was a very remarkable time to, I mean, I can't imagine anything which is more significant for an 8-year-old to be inspired by the likes of Gandhi and Nehru. And Nehru's speech on the first Independence Day of India, I think many of you have heard it. I certainly have heard it many, many times. It's a very remarkable thing. So I consider myself very, very fortunate that I have had that experience. And not only these two people, I think leaders of that generation was something else. I think it'll take us many, many years, before perhaps we reach a stage that we have such figures to to inspire us as to what we will do in our lives. And I think the lesson I got from that was about compassion, about secularism, about society, and especially Nehru's concern about we really will not be ever completely free unless we have our many fellow citizens living and enjoying a certain standard of living. And I think that you carry with you for the rest of your life as to what you do. And I think I've written an editorial in Science many years ago that I really don't consider any institution to be a valid institution unless that institution is dealing with the environmental issues and the issues of poverty. It doesn't matter to me whether this is an educational institution or a private institution or whatever, or a group of individuals as an individuals. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what have we done in these two areas?
That's quite interesting. Before you engage with the forest in Western Himalayas and Eastern Himalaya, you made a choice of choosing botany at undergraduate level. So, what was the rationale? What was the inspiration for choosing botany, and which stick to your rest of career, though it evolved in multiple direction later on?
I think choices in Indian educational system are very limited. They are, I was in the botany department, so there was no choice except to have a degree in botany. You see, at that time in the, I don't know what the course materials are these days, but at those time, you get into bachelor's degree of botany and zoology and chemistry. That was my subjects. You had three choices. Uh, I was very good in zoology, but I didn't like the dissections, and that turned me off. And I was reasonable in botany, and I was terrible in chemistry. And so I think the choice was very obvious.
So, is it like the way we do engineering in our generation?
Pardon me?
Is it like the way we do engineering in our generation? Means first do engineering and then figure out what you want to do in life.
Right, right, right. All my maternal uncles were doctors, and of course, the aspiration of the family or my family, my parents was that I would be a doctor. But I didn't have the grace to go to a medical school, and I'm so fortunate. And,
So you happen to make the right choice at
right,
graduate.
absolutely.
Yeah. So later on, after completing your PhD, you went to US and you spent quite significant time in Central America, especially in Costa Rica, studying the evolutionary biology and tropical forestries. Can you elaborate about your that experience where you contributed significantly to the field globally and also got recognition?
Yeah, I got very lucky. I should say, when I was in the Himalaya, I was working on trees and forest trees, and so when I went to University of Washington, Seattle, you aspire to do some very applied work. You want to do practical applied work, and I got a postdoc to do some work on breeding of populars. And it was very exciting. I learned a lot of things in my first year. And I used to do work on the breeding of populars But I'll go to the library and I will read about population biology and evolutionary biology. And I wondered, what I'm doing. I'm reading some stuff which seems very exciting and asking a lot of questions. And here, what is there in the breeding of trees to improve yields? And it's a noble goal, but it didn't excite me very much. Then a break occurred. The dean of our school called me and asked me if he would help the group in tropical biology in Costa Rica. At that time, there was a lot of interest on the part of North American biologists to work in tropics. It was during the Vietnam War days, and Americans were doing a lot of nasty things to the tropical forests in Southeast Asia. And perhaps that was the motivation, I don't know. But I readily accepted the invitation and I went to Costa Rica. And that was a very, very big break in my career. First, I got into something I enjoyed very much. It brought back the memories of work in the Himalayas, all the diversity in Costa Rica, in the Central American forests. There was only one thing I didn't like very much, snakes. You're walking and the snake goes and slithers through your two legs. And it's Costa Rica is one of the snakiest place in the world, but it was a lot of fun. And another break occurred. Somebody wrote a paper on trees. That trees might be self-pollinating; they might be inbred. And I thought that was not correct because I had a lot of experience of working in trees in the Himalayas. I could see they have showy flowers. I could see the pollinators, and I didn't think, they would be self-pollinating and inbred. So I set out to prove, not prove cross-pollinated. I didn't know whether they're definitely cross-pollinated, but I wanted to test the idea that they might be whether they're self or cross-pollinating. And uh, it was a big challenge to make controlled pollinations in the canopy of the tree. But I found some ways to do the experimental work and demonstrated the trees are largely cross-pollinated. And that work, I think, became a sort of a landmark work in tropical biology. People didn't know much about the biology of trees. And I was not looking at 3 or 4 species. I was looking at the systems on a community basis. And then I got interested in pollination biology, again, at a community level on the phenology. And the phenology you cannot do really in 1 year. You have to set up long-term phenological records. So I set up some plots for long-term phenology and all that. And I think that work really was novel. I'm not going to be very modest here. And it helped me gain some credibility in tropical biology. And at the same time, I think many of these people I was working with in Costa Rica, we all became very concerned with tropical deforestation, and we became a part of the group that led to the establishment of the field of conservation biology, new field that was in 1984. And we started a journal called Conservation Biology, which very quickly overtook ecology in circulation. I think in about 10 or 15 years' time. David Ehrenfeld was the first editor of the journal, and I was one of his associate editors. In about 2000, I'm sorry, can I keep going?
No, I'm to ask.
No, okay, all right.
Yeah. Just before jumping to 1980s and 1990s, I just wanted to ask, at what point did you feel that doing science, which we are doing good, doing excellent science, was not enough?
Exactly, good. All right, I'll continue the story.
Was it a particular incidence?
Huh?
Was it a particular incident which made you think that doing excellent science is not good enough?
I think that goes back to the earlier experiences. I mentioned Nehru's speeches, and that always stayed in my mind. That you have to do something for society, no matter what you are doing, and so that part was not that difficult. And furthermore, when I looked at the deforestation in the Himalaya as well as in Central America, and it was very obvious that from this devastation, the people who suffer most are the local people. Their lives are turned upside down because they have lived in a certain manner. They have lived within the environment, following certain traditions, practices, and so on and so forth. And it's a big shock to them. And so I was able to connect, the work we are doing and understanding tropical nature and how that work can be also linked with improving people's lives.
Let's move ahead. I would like to ask about the interdisciplinarity, which is at the center of ATREE's work, where we talk about the interface between natural science and
Okay.
social science.
Okay. Now I can continue my story.
Yeah, just a minute, just before that. So, because since you are primarily trained as a botanist and also in plant population biology, so when you realize that you need to cross the disciplinary boundary.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky. I was very lucky in terms of having a great interest in evolutionary biology. If there is one field of biology which is interdisciplinary, is evolutionary biology. You have to have a very good understanding of systematics. You have to have a very good understanding of biogeography, evolutionary genetics, population biology, behavior, and so on and so forth. There are many, many fields. So evolutionary biology is very, uh, very interdisciplinary. Charles Darwin, you can say Charles Darwin, he was the greatest evolutionary of all time, but he was also the greatest ecologist of all time, right? And he worked on plants, he worked on earthworms, he worked on everything, birds, and so on and so forth. So I mention him because he was the founder of the field of evolutionary biology. So it's very interdisciplinary. So I think you can see the value of integrating different disciplines into doing something more substantial. And so then there was this link between deforestation and the lives of people. And I was saying, we established the field of conservation biology in 84, 85. I think in 10 or 15 years, there was a realization that this is not enough. David Ehrenfeld, who was sort of in a way my mentor too, I was working very closely with him in the journal, and he thought that we were not making enough progress. All we are doing is describing species, threats to biodiversity, and so on and so forth. It's not enough. Diagnosis of the problem is not enough. We have to come up with solutions. And that was a really big turning point. In 2000, he wrote the paper War and Peace, and where he elaborated these ideas, War and Peace, I think in conservation biology or something like that, and that you have to do more. We have to bring in more disciplines into our field. And then soon after that, in 2003, there was sort of a further development that we started talking about sustainability, and sustainability science emerged as a distinct discipline. And sustainability science, by definition, is again interdisciplinary, and it went further than conservation biology into not only taking into account biological, natural science issues, but also social science issues to alter the course of development, sustainable development. Those are the words that were being used. So I think the transition from evolutionary biology to conservation biology to sustainability science was something very easy. And can I have a couple of more minutes to complete the thought?
Yeah.
All right. And then I think another turning point, actually, sustainability science evolved. People started talking about sustainability science in about 2003. But in 1992, in Billigirangan Hills, we started a project on the use of non-timber forest product species uh, uh, and harvested by soligas, and overall conservation issues or sustainability issues. And I was very, very fortunate. I mean, this is just remarkable. I can't believe my luck in the sense the three principal scientists who were working with me, one was Sharad Lele, who brought in sociology. The other was Balachandar Ganesan, who brought in economics. He came from business viewpoint. The third person was K.S. Murli, who brought ecology. And this was 92. And people started talking about sustainability science in 2003. And so we had that experience to how to integrate, looking at what the Soligas were doing, how they were harvesting, and how their lives could be improved, how they could be part of the making process, and all that work. And Siddha Sethi was joined the group, I think somewhere around 2004, 2005, and carried on that work further. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So you were quite a decade ahead than the rest of the world in terms of integrating multiple sciences in 1992.
Uh, I'm not, I don't want to put it this way. I would say I was just lucky. And I was just, I think one of the lessons, and I think this is for the students here, I think you have to take interest in all that, in as many disciplines closely related to your field as possible, and have dialogues and conversations with people who are working in areas that might be relevant to you, but of course you don't have much knowledge, but encouraging more and more interactions. And so I welcomed my interactions with all these three individuals I mentioned, and led to the conclusion that's the way to go.
Yeah, but it looks very smooth to you. But as external, as we see in 1980s, 1990s, someone who is crossing the natural sciences boundaries and interacting with the social sciences without formal training in interdisciplinarity. At that time, there was no C3, I guess, for you, and
Mhm.
still you could do it. That was quite amazing. Now I will just move ahead. So one of the most interesting turn in your journey was to move into the institutional building.
Yeah.
So what led you to found ATREE?
I think our program in Bilgirirangan Hills, and at the same time, I was also working with Ganesh and RG and Subhadra in Augusta Malai Hills. There was a lot going on. And then, of course, I had my interest in the Himalaya. And I felt that all this work could not be carried on a project basis. And an institution is needed to do this very different type of work. And I didn't think, that there were institutions of that kind in India. We wanted to scale up our work. We wanted to scale up our approach, and I felt that would be done under an institution, and we set up the institution. And I have an interesting story to tell too about the formation of ATREE. My work in India was in 92 was facilitated by, I was named Pew Scholar in Conservation and the Environment. And this is a program, you get a phone call that you would get at that time $150,000 as pocket money.
That was quite huge.
Yeah, it was very much. And you can do whatever you like.
Yeah, that's great. No submission of the utilization and all.
No, no. And uh, uh, I should also mention, yeah, I think this has also got something to do with setting up of ATREE. After that, I think the money just kept pouring in. I don't know. I mean,
Wow.
all sorts of places.
Wow. I think we should have a separate conversation with you on this.
One of my former graduate students one remarked that Baba knows where the money is when even the foundations don't know that they have the money, but he knows that they have the money. And another comment I should make is when the conservation biology field was established, the National Science Foundation started a program in conservation biology. And I submitted 2 proposals, and one proposal was accepted. And I called the program director to complain that the second one was not accepted. So he talked with me very politely and explained to me why the second one was not accepted. I said, well, your guidelines and so forth. And he, I think, got fed up and he said, Kamal, you got a quarter of 25% of all the money we have. Shut up. Don't complain and do your work. So anyway, so it was money was coming in. But in any case, going back to the Pew Scholars Program, so I was left with about $15,000. So I wrote to the program director saying, I'm going to use the $15,000 to set up ATREE. And he said, oh, I love the idea. And then those days, you talked on the phone. There were no emails and all that. You talked on the phone. But he said, Kamal, this is so unusual. Don't ever write to me about it because I don't want it in my records. So please go ahead and do whatever you want to do. It's your money. I have no control. And so we were bold enough to set up 15,000 with the $15,000. But as I said, the money was flowing in, and I was not really too concerned about sustaining the initial effort.
Good. So in around 2000, ATREE hosted an international conference on association of tropical biology. And can you talk a little more about that? Because that conference was quite a defining moment for ATREE. It gives recognition in uh, conservation world, and importantly, how that ATB becomes ATBC.
Yeah, that was again, it was a very pivotal in the development of ATREE, and I myself was very surprised by the success of that conference, and I came here, and it was amazing effort put up by the ATREE team, and all the conference organizers. They came and expecting a sort of a little booklet for abstracts. What they got was a big book with all the papers that are going to be presented, their extended abstracts. And everybody was just floored and with interaction with the people here. And ATREE immediately just was catapulted into another sphere as a result of that conference. And people from India too. And it was it also helped us get our first endowment grant. And I was telling, just 1 minute for another story.
Sure. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
So I had,
As long as it's endowment, we are okay.
okay, yeah, this is, there was somebody from, I won't name the person, there was somebody here from the Ford Foundation. And I think 3 years ago, they had given us a big grant to an institutional grant. And I had asked them at that time, can it be an endowment grant? And she said, Kamal, you keep talking about endowment grant. You will not get an endowment grant right away in the first year. We are going to give you ATREE an institutional grant. It is as good as an endowment grant. So anyway, so the same person 3 years later, 2 years later, attended the Congress, this ATBC conference. So I was very tired and I was sitting in my room in the hotel and I got a call that she wants to see me. And so I went down and she said, well, you have been asking for the endowment grant and I think we have a possibility. And this was all due to the ATBC conference and all that. But one last story I want to tell. No, I won't. Okay, just
Yeah, please go ahead if it is interesting.
later, maybe.
So, can you tell us the story about how that ATB become ATBC?
Yeah, that was again. I thought this was around the same time. I think David Ehrenfeld has written that paper. Just diagnosing the problems and all that is not enough. We have to think about solutions and all that. And so it was easy. We held a series. I was elected as the president of the Association for Tropical Biology and Conservation. I think 2 years before the conference was here was held. So we were going to have a workshops to redefine the mission, and it was because of that work, because my keep pressing the association that you have to be a little bit more interdisciplinary and you have to bring in other areas.
It's just for audience that C is for conservation. So earlier it was Association for Tropical Biology. Later on it becomes Association for Tropical Biology and Conservation. So that's the Dr. Bawa's contribution. So in relation to that's this one defining moment, could you able to share any more other moments that shape a tree that what we see today in last 30 years?
Oh gosh, sure. My memory is very bad as far as many past things I can remember very well, but some of the recent things I think they were very well. I think in general, I think the establishment of the doctoral program was a very pivotal moment. And I think the merging of SciSat with the ATREE, I think also resulted at that time in considerable strengthening of the institution. And then there were many, many other successes, I think, which are, I think, fairly well known. Our interventions in policy and especially the designation of Western Ghats sites as a UNESCO site, Sharad's work on forest rights, more recently our work on national mission, and also I think the more recent work on sort of defining the nature of the organization and better articulation of what we are, not only a knowledge institution, but an institution, knowledge linked with policy and action. And I think these are some of the highlights. I think in terms of
Yeah, in relation to this last point you mentioned that now ATREE works in the research, it's in grassroots, it's in policy processes, it's in education running MSc and PhD program. Was this breadth something you had imagined at early years that how that ATREE will work in multiple segments?
yes, I think uh, to be honest with you, initially we were more with the knowledge and policy, and the action was there, but it was not very well articulated in terms of action what we want to do. Although there were examples here and there, I'm talking at the institutional level, and I think this realization that three parts of the organization or three functions of the organizations have to be equally strong, I think that has occurred more recently. I would say going back to
Can you
last
elaborate
five.
on three functions?
Huh?
Can you elaborate on those three functions?
I think the three. Let me put it in give you some historical context. 2003, when sustainability science sort of came into being as a distinct discipline, I think what people were talking about sustainability science, practice of sustainability science requires border institutions. What are border institutions? And that is the knowledge must interface with policy. So in this overlap where science interacts with policy, that area is sort of the border institutions. And I think that we realized very, very early on. And also the action. In a way, action started with our Billigiri Hills project in 1992. And now I find it very interesting. I thought for a number of years, internationally, sustainability science has remained as a sort of interaction with knowledge and policy. But now when you look, and sort of latest paper by Bill Clark. Bill Clark, I worked with Bill Clark at Harvard University. He's also an evolutionary biologist turned sustainability science, and he's the real sustainability science guru. And his latest paper, he talks about knowledge, policy, and action. What that means, you have to implement things on the ground. You have to, it goes back to the conservation biology too. You have to find solutions to the crisis, and you can't simply go on gathering knowledge and work in that mode. And that knowledge must find immediate applications, and it's up to you to demonstrate that your knowledge is very, very relevant by seeing that things coming out of the knowledge do benefit society.
So knowledge for change.
Yeah, knowledge for change. Yeah, actually. So again, I think in a way, if somebody were to write the history, ATREE has been ahead of that by at least 4 or 5 years. That is sustainability science now. If Bill Clark, people like Bill Clark are writing now, and this is 2025 paper where he talks about bringing in now action as along with policy to the knowledge.
That's quite excellent. So just I would like to just shift gear a little bit. You are a field person You are a field person.
Yeah.
Throughout your life, you have heavily engaged in the field. Often, Subhadra narrates a story that when you were on field with her, you climbed that 20-meter ladder,
Yeah.
and there was Priya Davedar there, and she said, and I quote, "This place can be famous or infamous if this old man falls here." So I'm stating that so you are so passionate about the field, and right now there is a concern that the entire evolutionary science is under threat because of lack of field. So can you elaborate more that how you value the field and what is your message for the young scholars about the field, how field shapes you?
Yeah, I think it's, things you learn in the field. I mean, there's no substitute for that. And in a way, that also allows you to have a broader vision of the issues involved. Uh, I remember during my field time in Central America and all that, I will go out to do certain things, and I get distracted. Just stop by to see something. What is this? How does this work? And so on and so forth. And you couldn't do your work. And then I decided mornings I'm just going to be single focused and just going to head to the plants I'm working on and all that. Not look at here and there. Just get there, get to the next tree and next to the tree. And yeah, then in afternoon after lunch, I can explore a little bit here and there. So there's no substitute for field work. Yeah. I think we have to give time for question and answers.
So just the last couple of questions. Yeah. Yeah, we are going there now because since ATREE, what was begun as an idea has now traveled long way. Now let's look into the future. Because at the same time, now we see around that the things are changing rapidly, socially, politically, ecologically, technologically. And this change is happening at local as well as global scale. So, and this is creating a great degree of uncertainty. And we are failing to value the diversity, not only in environment as well as among humans. So, in this era of uncertainty, thinking about institutional resilience for institution like ATREE, what are the few core values or approaches you think we should hold on to while going ahead?
I think two or three. Both Anita and I were talking about this just this morning with somebody. So I'm glad you asked the question. I don't have to do much thinking. Uh, I think we have to get out of this mode of, little bit out of this mode of thinking and trying to understand an issue and so on and so forth. Things are changing very rapidly. And we're going to face a lot of uncertainty, more and more uncertainty as we move along. And so we have to think about how this change and uncertainty is going to affect the systems we are working with. And I think our knowledge of systems we are working with is going to remain very incomplete if at particular sites we are simply trying to understand the biophysical dimensions of that system and not trying to understand the various stakeholders who are interacting with that system. What is their view? What are their needs? How they view the system? And how do we work with those people? How do we create a greater coalition of actors in the landscapes we are working with? Secondly, we go with a certain idea, but we should be very open to changing that idea, adapting that idea, as we move forward and as we learn and as we gain more experience in that landscape. So if we go now and, I think it would be terrible if 6 months later or a year later we feel that this is still we are going to go along with that and not change. And the third point I want to make is because of this uncertainty, because of the changes, we have to be we have to take into account risks that are there, the risk our systems are facing. What are the tipping points? And how do we cope with those? So that element has to come in too. And I know, we are tipping points. One of those is climate change, and I know many of you are taking that into account too. But in any case, I think we have to be very clever and smart as we proceed further.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. This is you are talking about the understanding multiple dimensions of the problem, and you talk about the more biophysical. But what about the changing political climate globally and locally, and how it like progressive organizations like ATREE should navigate through those challenges?
I don't know if anybody can comment on the changing global climate. I mean, who could have predicted, 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago, as to what's going to happen in the U.S.? Okay, I can openly at least talk about political climate there or climate there. So I think that's very difficult. I think that's why we have to change our approach. That's because you're talking about another uncertainty. And so, in the face of this uncertain future and in the face of this rapid change, what type of change we have to bring in our work so that it is more adaptive, that we change as we move along and we spread the risks. And one way to spread the risks is, again, having broader coalitions and working with various stakeholders in whatever we are doing.
Just a link to that same question, that what are the one or two things that which we might need to rethink about the way approaches or values or the way of existing business as usual? What needs tweaking as per you?
Okay, yeah, all right. Let's say, these are very simple and elementary things, not very profound. I think again, working together, having more collaborations within the institution, among the institutions, and that's clearly one thing. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is my last question, that if you were founding ATREE today, what are one or two things you might do differently with the benefit of hindsight?
What would I do? I can only speak something, personally. I don't want to get into that. What would I do differently? Yeah. And I said this many, many times before. As far as my life is concerned, I wouldn't change anything I have done. And so,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's open this conversation for the audience. So before that, I would just like to ask the people who have worked closely with Dr. Bawa to share any memories or experiences. Can we start with Subhadra? Just to,
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go. It's a flashback, so it goes like this. Okay, so I remember it was Pondicherry University days, and we were in the field, and the great evolutionary biologist was supposed to visit the site, and I was just embarking into the pollination ecology. I'm not the biology, So I never had any knowledge of botany. So if you remember Rani M. Krishnan, the previous day took me and taught me with a hibiscus flowers, what's a sexual system. The first thing in pollination biology is you have to figure out the sexual system. So it seemed so easy with the hibiscus. And we had this walk, the famous green loop we do. And there was a shrub, Litsia. So, Dr. Bawa, plucks this flower and asks me, what's that thing? Very confidently, I said, hermaphrodite. Little did I realize there could be something called staminodes. I know, totally. So, after that, I never walked with him. Either I used to walk 3 meters away and 4 meters ahead and left Rani to interact most of the time. So, having said that, I think, he was not my direct advisor and mentor, but I remember submitting his proposal. We were, if you remember, Shankaraya's house is where you stayed. He's no more. And I had submitted the proposal. He was supposed to give the comments next day. Those days is what, hard copy and red pen. So, I never slept the whole night and was expecting a lot of red marks the next day, but there were only few. So that was a big relief in spite of me having got the sexual system wrong. So that was, it was, to be frank, those walks used to be lovely. It was a lot of learning. He used to give me a lot of assignments, which we really thrilling. We were really excited about all those works. I think I'll stop here and I'll leave it to youngsters to ask those questions. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know who I am. Of course, I'm Ganesan, but I don't know. I'm a botanist or whatever, the practitioner of conservation biology, conservation science, and all that. And then the whole credit goes to Professor Kamal Bawa. Is that first I got interviewed in Kalakan Manundari Tiger Reserve. Maybe it's very rare occasion. And overnight, I have been called that tomorrow morning you have to meet Dr. Primack, Richard Primack, conservation biologist, and then Professor Kamal Bawa from UMass Boston, and both of them will interview you. So I was thinking all kinds of things, but I was made to walk in the green, same green, and then Professor Bawa talked about. He showed me a plant, and then fortunately I remembered it's Balanophora. It's a fungus-like root parasite. Professor Bawa saw that, and then he told about lots of sexual systems, and then only I get to know about his paper on evolution of diaceae and other things and all that appeared in a very reputed journal that time itself. The thing is that I'm a botanist, and I want to search my roots and then trying to be very comfortable within my roots, and that's what I'm doing now. But when I was I didn't do my PhD that time when I met Professor Bawa and Dr. Primack, and then I was thinking what to do. And then Professor Bawa said that Ganesan, you do taxonomy, you do about plants, but you do it under the cover of conservation biology. So still I remember, and then still I do that, and then I'm cheating all of you that I'm doing conservation science or something, but I do in core that I do biology. Botany, taxonomy. The thing is that few days back, Subhadra also was telling about how she brought us down. In fact, like Professor Bawa said, Dr. Priya Davidar, kind of infatuation, I should say, that I was more interested in doing more of ecological science right inside the Kalakkad Manundari Tiger Reserve Forest. But I have been brought down. Of course, Dr. Ganesh also has been brought down. And then to realize that how people are linked with the biodiversity, I think I would say that that is what made me to be there in this institute for almost for 3 decades. And some of my colleagues are asked me that why you are in the same institution for 30 years. Maybe you didn't get to go somewhere else, but I got a good opportunities, but I got addicted. And then I was really got addicted to Professor Bawa's. I would say that he is like a Pied Piper. He made me to stick with the ATREE, and then practice systematics in the name of conservation biology. And whatever I do or whatever I talk about conservation biology, it's because of ATREE. And then ATREE provided a nice nest for me to occupy and grow up. And then if you people that I have grown up as a botanist, it's because of ATREE. Thank you so much, Professor Bawa, and thank you so much, ATREE, for talking to you all. Thank you so much. I feel this is my retirement, and I feel I want to retire. Thank you so much.
I think for younger folks, yeah, there's something called Bawa hypothesis. I would like you all to go and see that the rejoinder and its response. I think everybody should read the papers.
What was? Yeah, I think Subhadra is referring to a paper. Somebody wrote that paper. We are still very good friends, you know, she and I. And so I sent a rejoinder. I wrote to the editor that I have to send a rejoinder. You know, I'll write a couple of paragraphs. And they said, no, you can't write. We don't publish a couple of paragraphs. You have to write a paper, full paper as a rejoinder. You have to come up with all the evidence, tables, figures, and so on and so forth. So it took some time. So my rejoinder was the title of her paper, the original author's paper, followed by no. And I think she's referring. I want to refer to what RG said. RG is underestimating himself. Of course, he has done work in taxonomy, but he has contributed to so many other areas in terms of long-term monitoring, in terms of the work with the local communities, in terms of what he has published, trees and all that. And RG, one of the things I have always kept in mind is, in terms of the value of taxonomy, is my career was very much influenced by Peter Raven, as you know, who was a personal friend. He's still a personal friend, and E.O. Wilson. And they are both very well known in conservation biology. I don't think there are any group of two individuals who surpasses them still in the field of conservation biology. And they were basically taxonomists. One was plant taxonomist and one was insect taxonomist. And yet their influence on our whole field of conservation of biodiversity is not going to be surpassed by anybody in the near future.
Maybe because I was not a botanist, I didn't get many opportunities to work closely with Dr. Bawa. But every interaction with him was a chapter to learn. During one of the evening conversation, informal conversation, the old ATREE was functioning out of a 2-bedroom house in Anandaga, just with the 2 computers and a fax machine those days. During one of those meetings, he was just mentioning, your researchers, you should focus totally on your research and publication. You should see how to translate your research to policies. So I was just wondering how a taxonomist can translate his research into policy. Another few years, India's Biodiversity Act came. One of my major projects was denied by the NSF because of the India's Biodiversity Act. Then I deeply looked into that and saw many flaws. And first we wrote an article about how India's Biodiversity Act is impacting the taxonomy. Then we saw the ABS mention is the bigger issue. Then we realized that rather than the India Biodiversity Act, the issue is with the CBD itself, the concept of ABS, which is not that practical. So me and my colleague Pratapan wrote a series of articles, and between one letter was published in Science in 2009. And later when we were writing a long paper for Science, Dr. Bawa has readily agreed to be one of our co-authors. And working him with is not that easy. One draft, we sent to him. He sends a mail. Oh, I have another 6 hours in London airport. If you can send the revised manuscript within 2 hours, I can work on it. Okay, fine. We lost the sleep. We send the next draft. In another few hours, we get another mail. Oh, I have long 3 hours in some other airport in US or somewhere. And we got a rejection letter for that paper. We thought, oh, that's the end of it. They said, if you want, you can publish a 300 word letter. Dr. Bawa wrote, see, out of all 3 reviewers, 2 of them has recommended your article. You incorporate the comments and file a appeal. We wrote that. Again, the same story repeated. 2 reviewers recommended, 1 reviewer objected. But by the time we could convince the editor, and editor happened to be on our side, we again revised the paper, submitted again. Even the editor gave some suggestions. Finally, editor engaged a 4th reviewer, and the paper was accepted. And the toughest part was, after this, the reviewers sent a 28-page questions about the paper, and our response to that 8-page comment was for about 24 pages. And it got published in Science in 2018. And that is one of the most cited papers from me. So without Dr. Bawa's help, that we wouldn't have even sent an appeal for that paper. That would have been the end of that. Thank you. Okay. Questions?
Any questions on online attendees? Can you please type the questions in the chat box? No questions. Quite surprising. No questions.
Question, I think, follow what Priya was saying. It's like just about that. I think maybe the little interactions that or discussions we were having regarding the book that we were writing or regarding the portal meetings that we have, something's there. I think this is now in the air of ATREE. Like when you enter ATREE, there's something mysterious. What is this? I've not figured out. Maybe we can together have some discussions over tea and we can know. But then what happens is when we have something in the discussion and there's a very pressing issue, and then when Dr. Bawa listens to that issue, the first thing that happens is, oh, that's okay, that's solved. And then you're like, okay, that was the most pressing issue. And then the first thing that he says is that's solved. So then you're like, and then he comes up with, but then this is I think an issue. And then you feel this was an easy thing. So I think that's the most, an approach which is very different, that when you come up with something pressing issue and then somebody gives you an assurance that this gets solved and you are becoming very easy with it and you're like, now, okay, there's a way forward. So I think every time ATREE might have, I'm just imagining it, that every time ATREE might have been having those pressing issues, maybe looking it from the other side and making it an easy thing made the way forward. I don't know whether if this is something, and Dr. Bawa can explain this better.
Well, I'm not sure. I think this is turning out to be some sort of a tribute to me. But I would say the news about my demise are greatly exaggerated. I'm still sitting here. And no, thank you, Priyan, and thank you, Itza, for your comments. I think it's when you are a tropical biologist, right, Subhadra, working on the canopy, there is nothing you can solve is insolvable. We can find answers to every questions. But I think that the young people, what Priyan mentioned is, I think you have to be persistent, and you have to be persistent. If you're writing, you feel you have a good idea, don't get discouraged by rejection of something. Uh, I don't remember the name of a very famous ecologist in the US who used to say, if you don't have a 50% rejection rate, that means you are not writing enough. And so you have to take that into account. It doesn't matter if it's proposal or an idea. And the second thing is, and again, I come back to that point about, collaboration and working with others. I'm used to the US academic system. It doesn't matter whether I'm a professor or an assistant professor, or a postdoc or a graduate student. I'll never send anything out until my peers have looked at it, until my fellow students have looked at it, or how so many people. I'll have as many people look at it as possible, whether it's a proposal. Sometimes people worry about their ideas being stolen. Come on. When we are academics, we are professional idea generators. If you're not generating a new idea, how silly it might be, every 2 hours we have a problem. So I don't think anybody is going to steal your idea. And I'm sure, next day you are going to come up with a better idea.
That's quite inspiring perspective. Yeah, the Ganesh Balchandran is online. Can you please turn on your mic and make a comment? Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I'm in cold New York on my way to Yellowstone to track some wolves with field biologists and all this. I guess if you were to look at it, Kamal Bawa was also an inspiration to me, going from being a banker on Wall Street to doing some of the things I've been doing. And there are lots more things I need to discuss with him as well. But I also want to go back to the Conservation Biology Conference in Ann Arbor when I first met with him. And then, lo and behold, many years later, he has been on my doctoral committee and as a mentor, and long years of interaction at ATREE and now with the academy as well. So I continue to cherish my association with him. Of course, this is not a tribute to him, as you were saying, but yeah, just to enjoy, celebrate the kinds of things he can inspire other people to do as well. So it's been great, wonderful, and hopefully we'll see you soon, Kamal Bawa. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say something, Bala. I think you recall, I think the discussion earlier discussion was about connection between conservation and society. And I wanted to say, this is what we used to talk all about all the time. You might recall about our fellow beings in India and their upliftment and the issue of equity and so on, so much. And I think again, going back, I was greatly inspired by our conversations about that issue. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions from audience? Yeah.
Professor Bawa, I'd like to know what your vision for ATREE is 30 years hence, what you would like maybe changed or incorporated going forward.
Nothing. I mean, why do you have to change anything? I think you're doing very well. And I think, I looked at the 5-year plan, for example, I think it has, and this is a slide I think I sent to Tirath, right? And independently, I looked at the 5-year plan, the programs, and I saw that they are very well aligned with the global community is thinking about. And there are different words and different phrases. But in terms of, the issues that are critical, I think they cover all the critical issues. I think the only thing I would say is, which I've said before, is that we have to keep in mind we are facing very uncertain future. We have to keep in mind there are going to be risks, and we have to be aware of all the tipping points in the systems, and we have to bring a greater coalition of local stakeholders where we are working with. And if we talk about co-creating knowledge, we really have to mean it. And initially, of course, anywhere you have to go with a certain idea, but then idea, we must ask the question, who is going to use this knowledge? And so if somebody is going to use that knowledge, I think that we have to take into account that those people and so on and so forth, and adaptive, being flexible, and so on and so forth. Oh, something behind me? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think this is, I was comparing, where sustainability science, again, there is, if you ask somebody else, their view of sustainability science might be different, but it seems to me the consensus is that these are the important issues. And on the other side are the ATREE program, and they are all sort of, fully aligned with what the global community is thinking. And then you go, next one is where, in terms of, those 4 or 5 programs, I mean, they could be also linked under these. This is very dangerous stuff, Sachin, you have put me into. I mean, there's the board and there is other organization, and you people, I'm not trying to, this is just a suggestion. And basically the thinking is fully aligned. And these are some of the other issues, possible additional issues. But this is something, for me, to pass it on to the director and the faculty and to the board, but just so.
This question is coming from learning about economics. So, in lines of keeping the money flowing, has there been any instance in your career where you have, let's say, um, secured a grant or any money from an institution or a player in the society to do a research or any groundbreaking solution on ground, but you later realize that the person who has given the money is responsible for that problem? Then how do you go about resolving that?
I don't think, I don't know Fortunately, we didn't have to. We have not faced that situation. But in a way, you're right. I think there are many problems which are indirectly affected by some of the people we might be dealing with, and that is true. You see, you might say even with the public funding, that's government money.
Because even we
Government
as
also
a
does a lot of nasty things. And I'm not taking an easy way out, but I think, and
because
Anita
even
has,
like we
yeah,
as a researcher and young students gets this opportunity to work on certain projects and small researches. But when we get to know like the reality behind it, it's very hard to then keep on going and like be integrative about it.
you're right. There are some bad actors. I think mostly people can make out the bad actors. But then I think in a very large number of actors have sort of, as they say, different shades of gray, and that's where you don't know where you are. And I think this is something, I don't think, I will be less than candid if I would say we have found a solution. And this is a constant battle, constant struggle. And but I think mostly we have been able to avoid it. And I think that when there's a I think you are talking about personal situation, what to do. And
Even as an institution, if we face that.
no, as an institution, I think we have been uh, our experience so far has been good. I think that just when I was associated with the board, and I'm sure this is true now too. And there is a discussion. I think the first question generally we ask is whenever a new donor comes in, what is the background, what is the source of money, where is it coming from, and so on and so forth. I think um, a lot of thought goes into that thing. I think it's a comment.
Should I read it? Research apart, KCB and ATREE extended many lessons in building and sustaining unique institutions. Thanks to both, I was initiated into the art of dignified begging while serving as associate director, though I am yet to master the art.
Hello, this is Seema. Dr. Bawa, I couldn't be there, but I wanted to be around while ATREE is turning 30. And I couldn't help but mention what I learned new from ATREE and you, apart from all the research and other beautiful stuff we did together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we close it? That's quite strange.
So thank you, Bawa, Dr. Bawa, for your time, for your reflections and memories. That's quite helpful for us. Now, with your guidance and with your thoughts, we'll go ahead and see what happened. Thank you.